Drawback chess, what do you know of this concept? Allow me to show you the art of it in this game. All right, here we go. So we start with central play, and my opponent responds accordingly. So we attack the center. You should know this if you know your openings. If you don't, learn your openings. This, of course, blocks in the bishop, but we continue development. This is normal opening play. The idea is that black expects when you capture, they recapture, and the bishop will come out anyway. All right, so we continue development and we delay the capturing because we don't want to free the bishop as yet. Then this move is made, which indirectly is going to support this square. So that, let's say, for example, he captures and you try to play e4, where you attack the pawn, your opponent just plays b5, and he really solidifies the protection of the pawn. So continue to capture and develop towards the center. That is where your development should be, especially as a beginner. You want to target the center. All right, so this is all normal play. Learn your openings, you will know it. And here's still normal play, but he decides to attack my bishop, and he is attempting to double my pawns. So I have to be mindful of this, because with double pawns, the game can get a little tricky for you. Double pawns are very easy to target, and as a matter of fact, it would create an isolated pawn right on this d4 square. Isolated meaning it is by itself, not supported by other pawns. So here is bishop d6, and I decide to support my bishop with my knight. In case he captures, my knight can go here, and my knight will have opportunities to attack squares like g7 or retreat to d3 and put pressure on squares like c5 and e5. So he pins the knight. Now, with the idea that, okay, if I try to move my knight, what will happen? He would lose the queen. So he's saying he really wants to double my pawns. Now, the drawback of this move, yes, drawback chess, is that this pawn is now unprotected. So we would have an eye on that pawn, and that's why I bring out the queen to b3, putting pressure there. So the idea is we're capitalizing on the drawbacks of our opponent's moves. So he responds with the idea of b5. Now, what are the benefits of this move? Firstly, you must look at the advantages of your opponent's moves. So he attacks a4, he attacks c4. He was already attacking c4, so it means now he has even more pressure in c4. And always be mindful of when your opponent puts pressure on your half of the board. You can see this bishop puts pressure on your half of the board. You can see the pawn puts pressure on your half of the board. And this bishop to some extent puts pressure on your half of the board. With respect to our pieces, well, our pawn puts pressure on his half of the board, our bishop puts pressure on his half of the board, and our knight influences along with our queen. All right, so you must always be mindful of that, because it gives you chances for opportunities in the future. So we put pressure on his half of the board with a4. The drawback of this is, of course, we no longer could play a3 in the event that something goes on b4. This pawn can't go back, right? So he plays b4. He capitalizes on the idea that I can no longer play a3. Of course, I controlled b5 square quite a bit. He still has some influence there. But now, what did his last move do? It attacked the knight. So we must retreat the knight. The drawback once more of this move is that he has reduced the amount of pressure on the c4 square. So we retreat the knight and we challenge the pawn. There is some dynamic where my opponent might capture my knight, and after I recapture, he captures, and we're back to the double pawn scenario again, where we have two weak pawns, one on f4 and one on d4. It's possible, but he did not go that route. He plays a5, cements his pawn on b4, make sure he has ultimate protection of that pawn. Now we must let's look at the position for a bit, all right? And you can pause if you want. And basically, I want you to determine where do you see my weaknesses are and where do you see black's weaknesses are. All right. Now, here we go. For example, I would say not the weaknesses, but the strength. I could play on light squares a lot. As you can see, the light squares looks possible for us to capitalize on. With respect to my weakness, I would definitely say, listen, this pawn is extremely annoying. Controlling a square like c3, where one of my knights would like to occupy, come on. It's going to keep annoying you, right? Because it means that your opponent has taken away space from you. And when you do not have space, what happens is a position may become more difficult for you to play. So you always want to control enough space. The more space you get, the more control you get of a position. But sometimes space can bite you back, all right? So be careful. But we'll cover that in future lessons. So We continue. I decided to put pressure on this bishop. Why? Because it's in my half of the board, and I don't want my opponent pieces feeling comfortable in my half of the board. He retreats the bishop and he stays attacking my half of the board. So what do? Put some more pressure on the bishop. All right? Push him back. But be careful when you push back people. All right? Because when you push them back, they might push forward. So be mindful of the positions you are creating when you push back. So he retreats because, of course, my knight is challenging the bishop with potential to attack all of these things. And the bishop is also unprotected. Right now, we can safely say that these two pieces are well developed. This knight, somewhat developed, could do much better, maybe if he gets to this square, right? Via the c1 to d3 route. But he would be in the way of this bishop. Just explaining some things so that you can get an idea of your first line of development comes when your pieces are all working together. Currently, this bishop, this knight, these rooks, they need to synchronize a little better. So I go up forward with h4 because I am trying to capitalize on the drawback of this move. Yes, he's putting pressure on the diagonal, but at the same time, if I could pressure this bishop, then I would have better control of light squares. And can you see my threat with h4? I think you can. So he captures, I recapture, and look at this bishop, ripe for the picking, right? So my opponent plays the move h6 to make a square for the bishop, because if you had realized, you would see I had threats like h5 or f5. So then I still play f5, putting pressure on the bishop, because if this bishop is restricted, it means that my opponent is technically playing down a piece, right? And who won't want their opponent to play down a piece? So he retreats the bishop, and then I move my king away because I have two choices. I can either develop this bishop and then castle, by which means this h4 pawn might be quite vulnerable. That's the drawback of castling in this position. Or I can simply use my king to assist my knight while my rook still does some work on the h-file, and I can complete the first line of development, which would be connecting my rooks and making sure the minor pieces are out from the starting point. So this bishop would want to come out, this rook would want to do something. So he plays queen f6, and you must ask yourself, what is my opponent's threat? He's putting pressure on d4, so we must react accordingly. Or do we? We check, we attack the king, we protect the pawn. Be mindful that when he played this, he had two objectives, attacking the d4 pawn, but also putting pressure on the f5 pawn, which considerably restricts his position. So he plays the knight here, which puts more pressure here. He also defends the attack I placed on his king, but remember the knight is pinned. Now I decided to play bishop d3, which protects this pawn twice. Now notice it's attacked 3 times, but his king is still in the center. So for it to really be attacked 3 times, he would first need to move his king out of the center. So time, you have to be careful, right? He castles. I put my knight pressuring the queen. Can he take this pawn? You all should know your tactics, why he cannot. He moves the queen, and then can you find a beautiful move I play next? 2 pieces attacking this pawn. What do? Get rid of that pawn. Push it forward, attack the bishop, pressure the g7 square, pressure the knight. Oh my gosh, pressure the diagonal. He reacts by capturing, and can you find a move I play that finishes the game? Just queen takes h6. My opponent resigns. Hope you enjoyed this game. If you did, leave something in the comment section, because I want to create more videos like this for you. And subscribe to me if you want to see more. I'll see you next time. Later, guys. Come on!